I grew up mainly in Ulukhaktok. My first years, from a baby to about 5 years old, I grew up on Banks Island. With my parents, there was no community really, but there was always people with their own sod houses, whatever they had built, tent frames, whatever they had built, a little village together right where Saks is now. That was before they started getting houses. I remember that.
Did you ever see many non-Indigenous people when you lived on Banks Island?
Yeah, in Banks Island, I seen a lot of right from when I was just a kid, I guess, because there was a family there that had always lived there. I have no idea how long. Their names Carpenters, and they were the non-Indigenous people there. They were running a store, some kind of a outpost, outpost store. That's what they had. They had outposts set up all over the north, but these people have their own outpost, like it was their own little store, their own belonging. They traded foxes and seals and stuff from other people, caribou, whatever, with their food. And then the pelts and whatever they got from people for trading with the food for rifles, boats, whatever they needed, they traded it. And they never got cash. They just traded all the pelts that they catch.
Crops
But
look
they
like?
also had a MOT. I'm not sure what that really is, but I know they were looking after the runway, and I don't know what else they were looking after up there. I was just a little kid, but I know they had a building up on a hill and there was a runway. At the time when I was born, or when we were living there, when I was just a little kid, there was no skidoos except for one skidoo I've ever seen. And this must be like when I was about 4 years old. And this one skidoo, it was called Alpine skidoo. One ski in the front and that's it.
Wow.
But that's the only skidoo I've seen maybe for 20 years prior to people getting their own. Yeah. So it took quite a while for people to adapt into getting skidoos. They were more into using their dogs, because then if something happened to their dog, they know what to do. If something happened to their machine, they just leave it and go home. That's how it used to be, because I didn't know how to fix an engine.
And what kind of food were you guys surviving on? And how did you get it?
We mainly lived off country food. I've The only white man food that used to be given to me most likely was maybe tea, biscuits. Um, our mums would make bannock. The rest of the food was off the land. We get caribou, muskox, bears, rabbits, ptarmigans. Over the spring, we get migrating birds coming in. People get those and try and get enough to last them the year. But over the summer, people walked a lot. When I was just a little kid, my parents used to walk on the land, hunting caribou, walking on the land, just walk, walk, walk. And they had dogs with them, but the dogs had packs. The dogs weren't allowed to be pulling a sled. And now and then I find myself up really high and wonder, when I wake up, I'm sitting on my dad's shoulders. He's got a big backpack, and yet he's got me on top of his shoulder. And when I wake up, I'm looking around and I'm really high. It feels like I'm really high.
That's amazing. I love that. What a nice way to wake up.
Yeah.
Floating through the clouds.
Yeah, there's times when we would walk and hunt caribou. This was on Banks Island. We'd be walking, my parents would be walking on a land, hunting caribou. When they see caribou, they would get it, butcher it, dry it up, spread it out on the rocks, whatever, and then continue on. They did this for a good few weeks, and then on their way back, they pick up all their dry meat as they're going back, and the dogs pack all that back to their original camp down by the coast. And a lot of families did this in order to survive, because they needed dry meat and whatever for the winter time. Huh? If they run low on food, then they can rely on the dry food. Same thing they did with geese. Same thing they did with seal. Anything they can, they will dry. If they can't use it or if they can't process it right away, then they'll just dry it up. It's the easiest way to preserve it.
Can you tell me what?
They just cut it up into thin strips, make thin strips, and just put them on top the rocks and let the wind and the sun do the job and dry them up. Animals never bothered the food. And foxes, ravens, whatever, you see them around here, they're into everything. When I was a kid, animals will not go near another dried or dead animal unless they were starving, I guess. But they never bothered with the dry meat. They never bothered with the food that was cached in the ground. The only ones that did that was polar bears and wolverines. It all depends on how well you do come fall. Like in a fall time when it cools off, the men will again go out on their own and hunt caribou, leave the family behind and hunt caribou with dog team. And that is food that's not dried but kept in a cold place. They find places they dig in the ground and make cold places. They cache them so that they freeze. And they sometimes also make ice houses in the ground so that they get into the permafrost and then freeze them in there. And that's how they would preserve their food long ago, was either cover it or put it into the permafrost that was decked out yet. That's all I remember about that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember at all, because I always wonder sometimes, even I was cooking yesterday and I was like, I wonder back in the day, because it was very simple food, meat, maybe cloudberries, just a few things. Like, how did they prepare the dinner? Would they just have straight?
Just simple. You cut up your meat, you could either keep it in chunks or cut it up smaller, and they just boil it. Because they know that they need that broth from the meat to supplement their vitamins and whatever it is in their bodies. A lot of them have broth with their meat. They cook their meat in a pot. I used to see stone pots before my parents got a aluminum pot for the first time. I was just a kid and I seen my mom. She was talking about it and really excited about this pot. When she finished cooking the meat, she said it stuck in the bottom. They didn't know how to use them because they only had stone pots. Eh? She said it got stuck in the bottom, so she said she just never really used it until she learned how. I guess I had to learn how to even use a pot. But they always had khorlaks. They only use khorlaks for cooking and for heating water, drying clothes. That's all they had was a stone lamp. A kullik is a stone lamp. It's like a half moon curved into a half moon, but it's longer. And on the inside is carved as well. And at this side, it's at more of an angle because here they put the cotton, they picked off the land with the seal oil and light it. And they use a little stick to keep it from smoking all over the place. Don't ever ask me to light one. I wouldn't know what to do. Well, long ago, people they lived a really healthy life. And they don't just eat the when they have dry meat and stuff like that, they don't just eat it as is. They use fat like off the animals because they say that's the best fat you can have. And so they preserve that fat off the animals too and make it usable for either eating with or using it on a kullak. Yeah, and they need the fat on the kullak to be burning.
That's really cool. And then, yeah, because remember when we were talking about how your mom she thought she had TB? If you want to tell that story.
Pardon?
About how your mom had to go and how she couldn't get back. Did you want to tell that story?
I was just a baby. I was not even a year old. It was in the springtime that these my parents used to tell me these. The team that did the TB research or whatever they were doing, they were doing these TB tests and whatever on people. And they thought my mom was one of them. They thought she had TB. But when she got to Aklavik, they did another test and she had nothing. But she ended up staying on this side for about 2-3 years. I didn't know her. She said she lived in Aklavik for about 8 months and then they moved her to Tak so that any schooners, boats, whatever that might be heading across to Ikahuk, across to Banks Island, might be able to bring her. Because at that time, that's what they used to do is if there's a boat coming or going, then whoever needs to get back, they used to put them on board and take them back to where they came from. So when she came, I didn't know her. I didn't know her. I don't even know if she even tried to hug me or anything. I don't know. I've never been close with her since because I don't know her.
Yeah, and you said it was quite common back then to have families separated?
Yeah. It was quite common. A lot of people that had TB were sent south. Some of them made it back home. Just a handful of them make it home. Majority of the people that were sent out never ever got back home. Some stay like 10 years in a hospital in Edmonton. When they had that Charles Council Hospital in Edmonton. Some stayed like, I know my great-grandfather was there for 10 years. And he sure was good in English when he came back.
And then do you have any survival stories or interesting stories of memories from being on the land?
I'll tell you an interesting one. Our great-grandfather, or actually he's our uncle, but we call him Dadak, like our great-granddad, and a priest, a priest from Ulukhaktok, went over to Banks Island to go pick up my parents. I didn't know why at the time. We were heading back to Ulukhaktok. We were out on the Beaufort Ocean, like on the ice, on top of the ice, traveling. This guy, his name was Jimmy. He's seen a polar bear, and people know that polar bears that are on the ice don't have any babies, so they shot it. But as they were gonna cut the skin, they realized it had babies somewhere. It had milk. The babies were inside the snow from a big iceberg. They found 3 babies in there. I kept the youngest one till it was about 8 months old. It got quite big. I was really tiny. My mom said I used to grab the ears, pull myself up onto the back. Crazy thing, we would walk around with me. It would never go anywhere without me. It never did go, and it wouldn't go to another person without me. But anyway, as they were skinning this bear, they realized that it had milk. So this minister, or this father, this priest, a Roman Catholic priest, he started walking around checking to see if he could find a den, and sure enough, not very far, he found a den. There was 3 babies in there. They were quite small. When we first seen them, they were quite small. Usually they're born in December. This one was pretty. I took the smallest one. My dad said I grabbed for the smallest one. And he asked what I'm gonna do with it. My dad asked me what I'm gonna do with the bear. And I told him, it's gonna bring me places. in Inuvialuit. Humulakak out in I will bring you places. But my mom said it got to the point of where she was the one that was getting scared of it, because they do get mean. It has all these instincts, but toward me, it would never ever, not even a growl, not even a pat, nothing. It would just let me do whatever to it. But my mom said at nighttime when we're out camping, at nighttime I had to sleep right at the edge of the tent, like right at the tent. And the baby polar bear was outside and had to sleep against me. If it didn't smell me, it would cry all night long till I moved to where it was. The other 2 bears got sent to the zoos. They were really mean. The 2 males were really mean. The family that, like I said, Jimmy's family took two of them, but one was totally mean. They had to get rid of it. Like any little thing that came near it, it wanted to bite. So, and that one got sent out.
Do you know what zoo it ended up at? Maybe we can find a photo of it from a zoo archive.
No, mine went out. My dad took mine back out onto the land. In the late fall when ice formed, he took it back out into the sea ice. Went back to the land somewhere, and it came right back to where we were. And this was in Ulukhaktok at the time. It came to us in Ulukhaktok, right to our house. My mom said it was really skinny. I never seen it for about 6 weeks. It was out. It didn't eat the whole time. It didn't know how. Came back and died right there. My parents got rid of it before I got up. And I never knew nothing about it, like dying. They overfed it because it was So they said they could just see the bones because it didn't know how to eat. And then when they checked to see what was keeping it alive the whole 6 weeks, all they found was grass in the stomach. But and ever since then, I have nothing to do with hunting bears. Well, I'll follow, but that's about it. I wouldn't go near it with nothing, not a knife, nothing. And I could go out walking on the land and everything. People say there's bears and whatever out there. I say, if you just play with nature, it's going to be okay. If you're scared, too bad. They'll come after you. I think that's what kept me from, I think it taught me how to um, not be afraid of certain animals. Like even when I see wolves close by, people always say, make sure you look around for wolves and go home right away. Sometimes I see them running off. It's from my last name. They're afraid of my last name. My last name, Inuvialuit name, the one that was given to me when I was born, was a big shame. And just because of that name, it went, the animals could feel it. So I was never afraid of nothing. I can walk 12, 14 hours a day at home. Nothing bothers me.
And which name is that? Which name?
Herona. The very first name that was ever given to me. Well, when I was born, I was practically born dead. They said I was just blue. And at that time, there was a minister, John Sperry, Bishop John Sperry from Ulukhaktok. He used to travel all over the place, to little places, whatever. He stopped at my parents' igloo and found out my mom was in labor, so he stayed with them. But I was just not breathing. I just couldn't stay breathing. They were trying to keep me breathing. They had me in a rabbit skin, and they said I was starting to get cold, so they put me in a rabbit skin and put me on top a rock above the stone lamp above the kullak to keep me warm. And out of the blue, my mom said, my grandpa from the next igloo yelled, "Allah megatikle, change her name." So that's how I ended up with Herona. And they said after he said Herona, I just started breathing, warmed up, and that was that. A lot of us have all kinds of things from the names that we get from our family back. There's all kinds of stories. And it would, it'll benefit some people, but not all. Like some people wonder why we have to listen to this. We don't need it anymore, especially with the language. It was really hard for a bit. But I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. This was back in the 80s, kept pushing. I need to get this out. I'm not going to let it die. There was two of us, me and Helen, and that's how we started teaching in Wellington in the community.
Have you seen a big shift from 1980s to now of things, any improvements? No?
Well, most of the young people now do understand. Most of the young people now can say certain words and they understand the words they use. The word they use, they may mix it with English, but at least they're using a word. Whereas, say, about 20 years ago, a lot of people in our community wouldn't have even understood. They wouldn't have even understood that word, which is asking, how are you? That's how bad it got. The only things I'm sure they remembered were Kwana, Uvlami, just simple words. Ilvit, just simple words. But other than that, no one could hold a conversation except our elders. And for us, I had totally lost my language when I went to school. I couldn't even speak a word of it. But when I was 7, I've always lived on and off with my grandparents because I don't know my mom, so I never really lived with my mom. But I practically lived with my grandparents on both sides, more or less than I ever did with my own mother. And in order for me to get my language back, I went to my mom's parents. I moved to my mom's parents. They don't speak a word of English. They don't understand a word of English. I don't understand a word of Inuvialuit, so there you go. But it didn't take me long to catch on. Certain times people would ask me questions and I answer, not knowing if I'm answering right, but I tried. I just kept pushing. I didn't care. Like, I wanted these words out. And about a year later, it got to a point where I could hold conversations with the elders without. So there's times when I might use an English word in between when I can't remember something. But they started understanding me and me understanding them. It took almost a year to live with them to get it back. Yeah.
Do you see hope going forward for more language reclamation?
Pardon?
Do you see hope for the future?
I do see hope for the future. A lot of our young people are really into the language. When you write on Facebook, if you write on Facebook and you answer back in Inuvialuit, whatever, however you write it, they try their best to answer you back in the language. So I am really happy. It is helping. Even if it looks like it's not, it is helping. It's keeping the language going. And that's what I'm really happy for. It doesn't matter if you say one word, at least it's something. Like, a lot of our people didn't care for country food for so many years, and now they're starting to get back into country food. They're finally realizing that the Danik food that we've been having is different for our families or our bodies when we're so used to country food and then having to eat white man food when they're not used to it. And that's another thing that makes a lot of people sick. It's that they don't realize, to watch how they're eating both. You can't just eat. When your body's used to eating certain foods, you can't just eat one type of food. I don't know nothing about medicine.
Me neither. Me too.
I've always wanted to know. I've always wanted to know what they collect off the land, but I don't. I don't know. I only know what's edible. Yeah, you can get the roots off the land. The roots that we get off the land are like a carrot. You pull it out, it could be about so long, so thick like a carrot, but they're really, really sweet. In the springtime, they're really sweet, but as the summer start progressing, they start getting, It's like it dried out, huh? Berries, we get berries, crowberries, we get red berries, we get blueberries, blackberries. And just recent years, people have been collecting berries. And I've never seen anyone collecting roots for years. I know there's all kinds of roots and stuff in the ground. I know there's edible leaves and stuff like that, but I just don't pick it. Our young people never tasted these roots. We get mountain sorrel that we make into juice. That was our juice when we were kids. The mountain sorrel. We'd pick a big bag, put in a pot, boil it down to a juice like this. It turns red, red, red. And you add sugar, it's bitter. You add sugar, it's so good. You'll never stop having it with Bannock.
Nice.
Like I said, I don't really know nothing about flora and fauna for medical uses or for what's edible. I only know a few little things that are edible. I don't know what they use for to keep themselves healthy. These are the things. All I know is when a person keep having a headache, they would cut the skin somewhere on the head, and the person stop having headaches. I don't know what that is about. I used to ask, but my dad said he doesn't know nothing about those things. It was before his time. And before the doctors and whatever told him to quit doing that. One of my grandmothers had a tattoo. She had tattooed face, hands, arms. That's all I seen where her tattoos were. And the tattoos are given to them after a certain thing has been, like say she passed a certain thing that she's supposed to do and know at the time, or she had her first child or whatever, they tattoo them. And I don't know nothing about tattoos really. My family has tattoos. I don't. I don't care for tattoos. Like my dad used to always tell me, don't mark your body with tattoos and stuff. One time I asked him why. He said, it's not a very good thing, and it's not good to show off certain things that especially if you don't know nothing about it. Leave it. Don't do anything about it until you know what you're doing. Is that some things are pretty, or some things can get scary. Some, if you don't know what's happening, would they still believe in all these old folklores and whatever? So I guess that's where that one came from. Because I don't know.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the old folklore stories?
The only one I could remember is the one where there was when loons were white before they turned black. Loons were no. I got that wrong. Ravens were white, loons were black. There's a story of where this raven wanted to make the loon beautiful, and so he started marking the feathers on this loon with some kind of paint, or I don't know with what, but he got these white marks all over. And the loon didn't like it because his stomach got white, dripping, whatever, it got white. You see white on the loon, got white. He didn't like it. And this raven was white. He grabbed the loon grabbed black paint of some kind of black anyway, dumped it on the raven and said, "There you go, now I can see you." That's the only one I remember. Like he was kicked, they couldn't see him because he's white.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting to think, before TV, that's the stories they told. But I was even thinking about your polar bear. Imagine now if someone had a polar bear, they'd be famous.
no, everybody would have gone after me. Like
Yeah.
those Greenpeace people would non-stop bugging me day in, day out.
You might have a point.
Yeah, then I say, "You want half the feet? Go ahead." No, they never, like any animal you kill long ago or even today, you make sure you butcher it right. Take every part that needs to be taken, not just what you think you could eat. Because there's other people out there that like certain parts, like the hearts, the kidney, the lungs, whatever. You don't know. And the only way we know our country food is for the meat. We don't know nothing about how to use the rest of it. So this is why we were getting our elders about 3 years ago to start teaching us in Ulu as to what parts are edible, what parts can dry, and these sort of things. And it was going really good. I don't know if it's still going, but it was going good when I went home for a little bit for 2 weeks there. I wanted to see how they were doing it, so I went home just to try to find out how it was done. Yeah.
Do you have anything to share about? Did you do any sewing when you were a kid? Because I think that's very interesting too. Like what parts of the animals you used to make clothing and how you would stitch it.
Any fur. People used any fur for any type of clothing, but the best clothing they had was caribou. They had kullet ducks, they had caribou pants, they had caribou shoes, caribou mitts, and that's the warmest thing they had. And the thing is, these things wear off really quickly because goat hairs are so easy to break, they're brittle. So the ladies were constantly busy, constantly sewing, trying to keep their family warm. But in the summertime, I used to see people using sealskin clothing when I was just a little kid. I would see people with sealskin parka or sealskin shoes. And the type of shoes, they have all kinds of shoes, all kinds of different. They use whatever animals they can find to make clothing, bedding, whatever, things they need. And my dad said they use about 8 different furs for bedding on a bed. And each one of those layers has a name, and I don't know them.
Nice. Oh, you don't know. Okay.
I've never seen a bone needle before.
Yeah.
All I've ever seen was the silver needles or copper. And that's all I remember seeing is silver needles, copper needles. My dad had his dad's needle, and my dad was over 70 when he passed. My sister has his needle now. It went down 3 generations. See, that's how well they kept their stuff. He kept that needle and a thimble for when he's not at home if he needs to make quick repairs. And I've never seen a bone needle other than a museum.
What about the stitching? Was it just synthetic, or did they use the hide?
Huh?
The thread?
Oh, the sinew, the thread. They make their own sinew. People long ago made their own sinew, the back strap of a caribou or the back strap of a muskox, and it's just a thin layer of ligament like fibrous, whatever you want to call that. It's like a thread. You can pull it apart. Not the muscle, but this here. it, it, you dry it. You clean it before you dry it. You clean that. You take it right off the very top of the back strap. It's just right, sitting right at the very top. You take that off thinly, dry it up, clean it, dry it up, and then you pull them apart. And to use it, they twisted it to strengthen it. And also if they want to make their thread longer, they twist it and twist another piece on, and it gets long. I've never used that before, but I've seen my grandma use it now and then when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, they already had all these sinew, artificial sinew and whatever. So I just sort of caught on from my grandma about that part of sinew that they used long ago.
And how did they catch fish? Was it with a net or with the gukivak?
I've seen a few people using gukivak. I've seen my grandfather using gukivak and 2 other people. That's about it.
Can you explain what a gukivak is?
It's fish spear. Fish spear with 3 prongs. They're curved. The 2 outer ones are curved. Then there's one in the middle with little edges where when you get your fish, it will not come off. It gets stuck from those ridges in the middle. So that I've seen that, but I never really see anybody really use it just to try out. I never really see anyone using it to make to get fish for winter supply or something. Most people use nets. That's what I remember. Yeah.
When you were a kid, were they making the nets from sinew, or they were just buying nets?
A lot of people when I was a kid, like I think anywhere from up until about 9 maybe, my dad always had made his own net. And one day he decided he's going to buy a net. That was that. No more making nets. That's about it. But I see people tying their net. When it gets holes, they repair them. And then so there was one man I seen making his own net at one time. And this was about 20 years ago, which is not that long ago.
Nice. Any other questions that you have? Are you getting tired of standing? I mean, we have lots of great stuff. Are you cool if we stop the interview, or did you want to share anything else?
No, it's up to you. To me, I don't mind. It's a Saturday, nothing to do. You know me.
Yeah.
I will do whatever you want.
No, it's very good. I think there's some very nice.
I enjoyed it.
Good. Should we cut?